If you ask anybody that knows me, they'll tell you that my favorite band is Dance Gavin Dance. I mean, if you just take a look at some of the things I've got hanging up in my office, as well as my arm, yeah, it's pretty clear to tell that I enjoy their music. I got in around 2015. Holy fuck, it's almost been 10 years? And I have been a huge fan ever since. This is a video that nobody was asking for, but I'm still going to make it because I've always wondered how I'd rank their music. If you've ever watched an LS Mark ranking video, I'm going to be doing something kind of similar, where I break down each album by song, and then at the end, I rank all the albums, just to see where they stack up. Maybe one day I'll do a song ranking, but that might take a while because, oh, yeah, there's a lot of songs. So, let's just get right into it with... Now, I'm already technically breaking my rules because this is an EP, not an album, but I'll still talk about it. Released in 2005, this EP is not bad for a first outing. It's got a couple of bangers like Burning Down the Nicotine Armoire and Robot vs. Heroin Battle of Vietnam. By the way, the names are just going to get weirder from here on out, so buckle up. But other than that, not particularly my taste. However, the true star of the show here is guitarist and co-founder Will Swan. He has never missed, and it is clear that with this EP, he was coming out of the gate swinging. I mean, shit, there's an entire genre of music named after him called Swancore, so clearly he's doing something right. Founder Matt Mingus on drums is also phenomenal, and I genuinely believe he is one of the greatest drummers of our time. If you're interested in hearing the band's beginnings, I'd highly suggest this EP. As a first outing goes, it's pretty solid. But after this released, the band was picked up by the music label Rise Records, and they would go on to produce their first studio album only 6 months later. Released in 2007, this album is a standout. Honestly, as I'm writing this section, I'd be surprised if it doesn't hit number 1 in the final ranking. Admittedly, I slept on this album for a long time, only listening to a couple songs from it like Lemon Meringue Tie and Turn Off the Lights and Watching Back to the Future. But about a year ago, I decided to give the whole album a listen through just to see what I was missing. Turns out, what I was missing was unironically some of the best music I've ever heard in my life. This album in particular is going to be hard to rank all the individual songs because there is not a single bad song on this album. If I had to choose a favorite, it would probably be It's Safe to Say You Dig the Back Seat. It just, the intro guitar, Johnny Craig's vocals, so good. I should actually probably mention the vocalists now. We have John Mess on unclean or screaming vocals. He is amazing. I think he brings it every day of the week, and a lot of people discredit this genre because of unclean vocals, but with this style of music, I think it really adds to the punch. The other vocalist, as mentioned before, is this human blister, Johnny Craig. In his defense, lately he's been cleaning up his act and he's done decently for himself. And while I'm all from separating the art from the artists, man, he did some fucked up shit in those days. Of course, Will Swan and Matt Mingus bring it. You can really tell that they're starting to refine their styles and they hit every single song. While Johnny Craig might be a terrible person, I think he is a phenomenal vocalist and his voice carries this album. His gritty, early aughts style fits so perfectly. A quick fun fact about this album, Johnny Craig was so fucked up on drugs and alcohol when they were recording it that the lyrics they have written down don't always match up with what he was actually singing because it just turned out to be nonsense. Luckily, that problem was solved with the next album. Downtown Battle Mountain 2 is going top of the list and it is going to be hard to dethrone. I mentioned previously that the Johnny Craig problem was solved with this album, and that's because the band did their first line change, kicking JC out and bringing vocalist Kurt Travis in. Personally, he is my favorite vocalist they've ever had, and while he isn't with DGD anymore, his band Royal Coda, who actually also happens to have Will Swan, is fantastic. Maybe one day I'll even do a top 5 Swancores band, because there are some pretty good ones out there. This is also the album where John Mess really started refining his sound. Top standouts definitely include Alex English, Rock Solid, Me and Zoloft, and of course, Uneasy Hearts. To be honest, that was probably my favorite song in their entire discography for a long time, and while I still like it, it is not as good as I remember. I must have been looking at it with rose-tinted glasses. However, that is saying it is still really good. This was the album I listened to most when I first started listening to the band, because as surprising as it is, I did not really like them when I first heard them. Fuck, if only 2015 me could see me now. This album is also the first to introduce music videos to the band, with me and Zoloft. Although it is very jarring, because at the time they shot it, John Mess had actually taken a step back from the band, so the video has Will Swan lip-syncing over John Mess's vocals, which it kinda throws you off, but not enough to not enjoy the song. Long story short, this album is fantastic. It is going above Werso, but underneath Downtown Battle Mountain. Here we arrive to the third studio album, and Kurt's second, Happiness, released in 2009. This is the shortest album to date, not counting Werso, with only 10 songs. This is also the album where John Mess had to take a step back due to Lyme disease, so Will Swan subbed in for the unclean vocals. They actually sound pretty good, and they really fit with the sound this album is going for. Standouts definitely include Carl Barker, Tree Village, and Strawberry Swishers Parts 1 and 2. The band decided to try 3 songs with no uncleans at all, those being the aforementioned Strawberry Swishers and the song in between, Don't Tell Dave. While the Strawberries tell a relationship story, Don't Tell Dave is more of a party song, very upbeat and very catchy. If I had to pick a favorite and least favorite from this album, it is a really hard choice. My favorite would have to be NASA. Man, I just have such fond memories of riding the bus to school in the mornings, having this on repeat, as it's just so good, and it has some of my favorite instrumentals off of their entire discography. As for my least favorite, it's gotta be Powder to the People, and that's not to say it's bad at all, actually, it's still pretty good. It's just one that I don't jive with as much as the rest of the album. Sadly, this is Kurt Travis's last album with the band, only being featured on a future song later on. He left the band due to disagreements with style and his own personal problems. However, that being said, he has gone on to be the frontman in a few bands, most recent of which being Royal Coda, as mentioned earlier, and Golden Circle. This album is fantastic, and I have a lot of good memories with the songs in particular. This is going under self-titled. Alright, I'm going to be completely honest with you guys. This one was rough to get through. I don't know what it is specifically, but this album has always rubbed me the wrong way. Johnny Craig returns, for some fucking reason, to deliver the vocals we've all expected from this human equivalent to a participation medal. They're good, they irk me to no end in this album. I mean, that's not to say it's all bad. Standouts include Elder Goose, Pounce Bounce, Blue Dream, and Thug City. Although, I think I only like Thug City because Johnny Craig says, haha, Dance Gavin Dance baby, in the beginning of the song. The best part of this album for me is, as always, Will Swan, who just continues to prove why he has an entire genre named after him. If I'm going to listen to this album, I'm going to listen to the instrumentals. If I had to pick a favorite, Elder Goose with no contest. The lower register guitars mixed with Craig's singing really just mesh well. After this album, Craig would be kicked out of the band for good this time, and his replacement? Well, I'm just going to have to listen to the next album to find out. Going at the bottom of the list. There's 2 versions of this album. Its original, that was released in 2013, and the remastered version that came out in 2019. But for the backing tracks, I'm going to be using the remastered. This album marks the beginning of the Tillian era, meaning that the band has a new lead singer, Tillian Pearson, formerly of Tides of Man, which is also a really good band. At this time, longtime bassist Tim Ferrick also joined the band, thus ushering the new lineup that is still used today, with one notable exception. In April of 2022, Tim Ferrick tragically passed away, unexpectedly. This shook the community, as well as the band themselves. With this being said, he is remembered through his work with this band, as well as his other band, Wolf and Bear. But I'm getting off topic. This album is fantastic. Standouts include Carve, Jesus H. Macy, Turn Off the Lights Part 2, and Doom and Gloom. More on that one in a second. This album combines heavier instrumentals with angelic vocals from Pearson, and as stated before, John Mess and Will Swan just aged like fine wine, getting better and better with every album. Matt Mingus is also standout. When it was first released, there was one song in particular that didn't vibe with me, and that is the 5th track, Doom and Gloom. That being said, when the remastered was released in 2019, the song grew on me, something clicked, and now it's one of my favorites in their entire discography. This also started the robot with human hair saga, while they've had previous mentions of the robot, this album has the song Death of the Robot with Human Hair, that also has an accompanying animated music video. These animated music videos would go on to be released with at least one every album for the next 3 albums. They all tell a story, and chronologically, Death of the Robot comes last in the timeline. I'll explain the story when I get to the beginning, but that's not for another 2 albums. If I had to pick a favorite, it would definitely have to be the closer, Turn Off the Lights, I'm Watching Back to the Future Part 2. It has some of the best vocals I've ever heard in any song ever, not just in this band, and the guitars are probably some of the best. If I had to put it in a ranking video, which I might, this would definitely hit top 10, maybe even top 5. I'm putting Acceptance Speech under Downtown Battle Mountain. Man, they've really stepped up their game. Let's hope they can continue this momentum with the next album. Well, we've reached the point in which I became a fan. This is the first album I ever heard by them. I remember when I was a wee lad in grade 9, I was at a friend's house working on a school project. He showed me the opening track, We Own the Night, and while I wasn't immediately hooked, it definitely was an earworm that dug its way into my brain. Over time, I started listening to more songs from this album, mainly Awkward, Death of a Strawberry, and Eagles vs. Crows. Actually, fun fact, to this day, Eagle vs. Crows is the song that I use to test out any headphones or speakers that I get. It took me about a year or so after the initial listen to go through the entire album, and I have to say this might be one of, if not my favorite Tillian era album. Standouts definitely include those previously mentioned, but also the vastly underrated Something New, The Cuddler, and Stroke God Millionaire, the last of which continued the animated robot with human hair saga. Picking a favorite off this album is definitely hard, and it's a toss-up, but as cliche as it might be, We Own the Night is just fantastic. The last minute or so of the song is genuinely some of the best music I've ever heard, with Will Swan's amazingly gritty guitar mixed with Tillian's angelic voice. As for the least favorite, it's gotta be Variation. I'm not saying it's bad, and Tillian and John Mess screaming/singing the same line during the chorus always gets me right in the best spot. It's personally just not one I'd purposely come back to. If it comes on, I'll listen to it, but I'm not going out of my way to listen to it. This album is great, and honestly, Anthony Fantino giving it a 1 out of 10 is a crime. You can have your opinions, but saying something is bad because you don't like it, that's where I gotta draw the line. You can tell that the band is, while still deploying some of the heavier punk rock elements, they have started to lean more to that poppy vibe, especially with Something New. On the Run is also just a banger track. That will put it underneath Downtown Battle Mountain. Alright, here we are, Mothership, and I don't even know where to start with this album. This album is almost perfect. No, scratch that. This album's perfect, and just from right off the bat with Chucky versus the Giant Taurus, you know that you're in for a wild ride, just with those guitars, and John Mess coming in bombastically, and Tillian following it up, and the whole thing is just fantastic, and it's just the opening track. I mean, this album has bangers like Frozen 1, Young Robot, Inspire the Liars, Betrayed by the Game. Let's not forget Man of the Year. Man of the Year is probably their best closer. Well, get there in a minute. Mothership is just fantastic. Standouts include all those, but honestly, this whole album is standout. This album has not one skippable track. Now, Petting Zoo Justice was a bit of a sleeper hit for me, and I mean, up until last week I didn't really like it. But then I was driving in my car and it came on and I thought, hold on a minute, this doesn't sound as bad as I remember it. So I listened to it, and then it ended, and I put it on again, and I said to myself, holy shit, is Petting Zoo Justice a sleeper hit? It quickly shot up to the top 5 of the album for me. And honestly, this is probably going to be the hardest album to rank in terms of individual songs, just because none of them are bad. Man of the Year is great as a closer, as stated previously. Chocolate Jackalope gives us some good Will Swan rapping, which we haven't really heard much of since then, except for Billy Royalton. I mean, honestly, the only thing I can really say about this album conclusively is that it is perfect. you should definitely check this one out. I have a wall flag of it for a reason, and it is going at the top of the list above Downtown Battle Mountain. Never thought I'd say that. Ooh-wee. Talking about all this Dance Gavin Dance is really making my voice tired. And you know what? I think there's someone who's better acquainted to talk about this album than I am. So, without further ado, I'm gonna hand the mic over to my main man, Shay.
No problem, Mason. We'll give his voice a break for a bit, and instead, I'll subject you to my wonderful voice. Honestly, I couldn't think of a more perfect channel to be talking about Dance Gavin Dance on. Mason was, after all, the person who got me into the band. Back when we were in grade 11, he was the one who showed me the song Young Robot. And while that wasn't what instantly got me hooked in the band, in fact, I actually wasn't too much of a fan of the song when he first showed it to me, it did later become an earworm that led to me looking for more. And that more that I found that did make me a fan was none other than Artificial Selection. I love this album, and this album is truly phenomenal. From start to finish, you have some of the most interesting bangers you can find in this genre, and even some of the most interesting for the band themselves. After all, in Artificial Selection, they decided to go a bit of a different route with how they wanted to sound. Not completely different, to the point that they alienate any of the fan base, or move too far away from the sound they're known for, though it is an album that does, in my opinion, sound very different than the previous. When you're coming off of the album Mothership, which is more of, in my opinion, a harder punk rock kind of album that does try to do a lot of experimental things, it's not until you move to the album Artificial Selection that you truly get some of the more interesting sounds that Dance Gavin Dance can create. The word that I would feel best to describe this album is ethereal. The album feels space-like. There is this sense of grandiose to the instrumentals. Speaking of which, I think this album also has some of the best instrumentals of any DGD album. I mean, they have some of my absolute favorites. Count Basie, Suspended in This Disaster, Son of Robot, Evaporate. I mean, I could go on. Now, I don't think this is a perfect album. I mean, I wouldn't even say it's their best. It is without a doubt my favorite, but I don't know if I would truly go and say it's their best album. There is definitely a debate on the quality of some songs to some others on this album. Where you have highs with songs like Suspended in This Disaster, Son of Robot, Evaporate, Care, and Count Basie, you also have some more forgettable songs with Bloodsucker, Gospel Burnout, and Hair Song. Now, while I'm not saying I don't like those songs, I actually do quite like some of the choruses of those songs. They do tend to be the more forgettable songs when you actually finish the album. This one also has probably the most hard DGD song to hear in concert. When me and my buddy Mason were in the crowd back in 2019 and heard this next one is called The Rattler, we knew we were in for some fucking shit with what was about to happen with the crowd. Now, I want to mention what I feel is the best song on the album for me personally, and what I feel is probably the worst song on the album. When I say worst, I'm not necessarily saying it's bad or anything, or even a horrible DGD song. I'm just saying it's the least memorable when you finish the album. So, for what I consider the best, drum roll please, Suspended in This Disaster.
Winner, Gagnon.
Now, that was a hard decision to make. Like I said, this album has some of my favorite songs, and I struggled to pick between Son of Robot, Count Basie, and Evaporate. But I just find that when I come back to this album, I usually find myself listening to Suspended in This Disaster way more than I listen to any other song. Now, 2019 me, 2020, and 2021 me would have definitely disagreed in terms of what the best song on the album was. As like I said, with those other ones, my thoughts always tended to bounce around to what I considered the best. But I would say with confidence right now, it is Suspended in This Disaster. If you get a chance to go listen to any song off of any of these albums, take my word for it, this is the one that is definitely worth listening to the most. Also, here's a little tip from Uncle Shay. Go listen to the instrumental to this song. You will thank me later. Absolutely chef's kiss. And now for what I feel is the worst song on the album. Drum roll one more time. Slouch.
Mission failed. We'll get them next time.
Okay, so Slouch, like I said, is not a bad song. In fact, I kind of like the chorus to this song, but it definitely is the most forgettable and the one that I find myself going back to the least on the album. It's taken me years to really actually find the enjoyment towards that song, and most of the time I notice that I end up skipping it when it comes on. I don't know why. I don't think it's a bad song. I don't know. It's just the one that I don't really find myself wanting to listen to all that much. The other great thing with Artificial Selection is it has, without a doubt, the best closer for any DGD album. Evaporate is the definition of blowing your load too soon. This song would be the perfect final closer, like not just an album, but for the band itself. Let's say that Artificial Selection was the final DGD album. This would be art with how good it is as a send-off to the band itself. And I feel that it's an amazing closer for this album, but it does somewhat feel a bit ruined in the sense that it feels like it was used a little too soon, and that this would have been much better to do further down the line. I'm not sure where Mason is going to put Artificial Selection in terms of his DGD ranking. I hope he puts it somewhere towards the top, because for me personally, this is without a doubt my favorite DGD album, and like I said, the one I find myself just always coming back to the most. Anytime I want to just chill and listen to some pretty ethereal, just space-like cool music, especially if I'm smoking. It is without a doubt Artificial Selection that I find myself going back to the most. Anyway, thanks Mason for allowing me to come on, and I hope I gave his voice a little bit of a break. My name's The Touche. If you want to go check out my channel, I would really appreciate it. While I don't do gaming and music related videos like Mason does, my channel is more oriented towards movie reviews and some sketches and short films that I have directed and made that also star Mason.
He's much more of a dick this time around.
If you guys want to go check that out, go check out my channel. Like I said, The Touche. Thank you Mason for having me, and remember, bless that mess.
Wow, thanks for that, Shay. Way to really upstage me on my own video. You rat motherfucker. Here we have Afterburner, the album that came out right after we all went on home arrest for 2 weeks. I put the air quotes in the wrong place. Home arrest for 2 weeks. I can use that, right? Afterburner it came with little fanfare. I mean, Prisoner was great as an opening track, and the music video was pretty good. Strawberry's Wake was also a really nice music video, including the John Mess coming out of the window. I couldn't get out of frame enough to do that, so I'm just going to put a video over my face to show the frame. Standouts also include Lyrics Lie and Three Wishes. Those are pretty excellent tracks. Around the mid, it kind of loses me, but Born to Fail is pretty good. Honestly, before doing this ranking, I always thought that Afterburner was kind of mid, and it was definitely going to go on the lower list, but after re-listening to it for this video, I realized that I don't actually hate the songs as much as I thought I did. The only songs I can probably say that is my least favorite is Parallels, and it's not that it's a bad song. I don't know, I just personally can't get into it. Into the Sunset is also a wasted opportunity, for a different reason, and I only say that because Nothing Shameful was the best song they've ever put out. It should have been the closer, and I'm not going to apologize for saying that. Nothing Shameful is genuinely a perfect song. Like, I don't know how they managed to just pull out everything they had for this one song that should have been the closer, and I consider it the closer of Afterburner. I mean, I kind of consider Nothing Shameful the true closer, with Into the Sunset almost as ending credits, and I just think that they did too much with Into the Sunset. They had too many style changes in the middle of the song. Bill Murray's fine. I don't mind him. It's just when I listen to a DGD song, I'm not listening for trap beats, because it sounds like a Joji song halfway through. It's personally not for me. If you like it, have at her. I'm not gonna shit on you. Afterburner, it was alright. It's definitely a bigger standout than I was expecting it, but still nothing really too special. But it's a pretty good mid-tier album. I guess now would be a good time to talk about the two Tree City Sessions albums, and I'm going to condense them down into one little segment because I can. It's my video. You're not God. You can't judge me. Tree City Sessions 1 and 2 are both live studio recordings of past songs by the current lineup. Tree City Sessions 1 standouts include Alex English, Carl Barker, Lemon Meringue, Ty, me and Zoloft, had to remember what they were for a second there, and We on the Night, of course. Not all of them are great. This might be a little controversial to say, but I don't really like Tillion's rendition of And I Invented Times in Roman. It just doesn't hit that itch for me. The way that Tree City Sessions 1 worked is they took two songs from previous albums up into Instant Gratification, because at the time that was the latest album, and they re-recorded them. So they were pretty good. And then between Afterburner and Jackpot Juicer, our next album I'm going to talk about, they did Tree City Sessions 2, which was actually a really cool idea because it was a fan-voted album. Fans got to choose one song from each pre-Tillion album, so Downtown Battle Mountain up into Downtown Battle Mountain 2, and then two songs from the Tillion era, so Acceptance Speech, Instant Gratification, Mothership, Artificial Selection, and Afterburner, which again was the latest album up until that point. The fans voted some pretty good ones. I gotta say they weren't all my personal favorites, at least going into them. Like Blue Dream. Blue Dream is probably my favorite song on Downtown Battle Mountain 2, but I'd have to say that I would have preferred to hear like Thug City or Pounce Pounce. But Tillion's rendition was pretty good. Others include Backwards Pumpkin Song from Downtown Battle Mountain 1, which, going into it, I would have preferred maybe It's Safe to Say You Dig the Back Seat or Antlion, but Backwards Pumpkin Song is pretty good. And then something happened. Now, they had 4 singles. They had a few singles. They had a few singles up until that point. Summertime Gladness, Pussy Vultures, Headhunter, and Blood Wolf. And the fans overwhelmingly voted Pussy Vultures, which I happen to have been included in that vote, because it's their most heartbreaking and beautiful song they've ever put out. However, someone decided to hack the vote, and even though Pussy Vultures was winning, they decided to put the votes to Pussy Vultures up by a very, very wide margin. And they realized that. The band realized that. So they did not do Pussy Vultures because they didn't think it was a fair victory, even though it was winning. So they did Summertime Gladness instead. And while I like Summertime Gladness, I think it's a good song, I will never forgive that person for robbing me of Pussy Vultures. Here we have the last album as of recording this video, Jackpot Juicer, released in 2022. And if I'm being completely honest, I don't have a lot of good things to say about this album. Actually, I don't really have a lot of things to say about this album at all. It is a lot of fluff and a lot of filler. I mean, with 18 songs, there's bound to be some not so great standouts. That being said, this album does have some pretty great songs. Synergy, Pop Off, Die Another Day, those are all fantastic. Feels Bad Man, nice summer, groovy vibe. Probably their grooviest song they've ever put out to date. Ember and Holy Ghost Spirit are also pretty good, but everything else just kind of loses me. Andrew Wells being a more vocal feature instead of just closers, I love it. And honestly, this is going to be really controversial to say, but I think the band has gone so far, or I think they've gone as far as they can go with Tillion. The last couple of albums have started to sound really similar and samey. And I know he's got other projects, but honestly, I think Andrew Wells should be the frontman of Dance Gavin Dance now. Every song he's on is just gold. But that's just the opinion of one dumb user. That's just the opinion of one listener, and I don't really know if anybody else shares that sentiment. But all in all, Jackpot Juicer is Jackpot Juicer is an okay album. It's definitely not my favorite. It's definitely not my least favorite, though. It's definitely in the middle of the ranking. It's definitely my least favorite Tillion album. Not to say that it's bad, but it's one that I don't really find myself coming back to that often on purpose. Like, if a song comes on from it, in my shuffle, I'll listen to it. But if not, I don't really purposely go back to it. If I had to pick a favorite song, Have a Great Life, the closer, is fantastic, and it feels like a really good send-off to Tim, their bassist who passed away. It's pretty good. I was very scared that it would be another Nothing Shameful Into the Sunset, because the song previous is called Swallowed by Eternity, which is pretty metal as shit, actually. The song is not great. It's not terrible, just not great. If I had to pick a least favorite song, it's really tough to pick one because they're all not great. They're all hovering around that pretty samey feel of, yeah, this is a song, I can listen to it, I can sing along to it. Nothing really stand out though. So yeah, that's Jackpot Juicer. It's going in the middle of the list, but maybe it'll grow on me like Afterburner did in a couple of years. Who knows? And that's how I rank all the Dance Gavin Dance albums. This video took a lot longer than I was expecting to, because if you looked at my last video, which was the music videos ranking, I thought, oh yeah, I'll do this one instead of the album rankings. I'll do this one instead of writing the album rankings, because they only have like 10 music videos, maybe at max like 13 or 14. Nah, they had 27. I was not ready for that, and so I poured everything into that one. So yeah, this one was fun. I like doing it, and maybe I'll do more music rankings like this, because I have had a lot of fun doing it. Stay tuned next time where I maybe talk about the songs or the singles. I'm thinking about doing the singles first, so we'll see. Anyway, my name is Deepo. I hope you all have a fantastic day, and I will see you in the next one.